referee again checking his watch. And there it goes! The final whistle!
Carlo Corazon will wait inside the box for this from Martin Knapp. And a header on it there, and that might have been it. That was a goal for Canada. The header was it Jason DeVos?
One last chance for Canada. Sophie Schmidt takes a deflection. Matheson! Is that the goal that wins bronze for Canada?
Qualified for World Cup 86, defeating Honduras by a score of 2-1 here in St. John's, Newfoundland this afternoon.
Welcome to the Canada Soccer Nation podcast. My name is Jason DeVos. I'm the Director of Development with Canada Soccer. And every week I'm joined by Brad Fougere, Digital and Corporate Communications Manager with Canada Soccer. Brad, how are you? How's the week been so far for you?
It's a busy week. Things are going good. We're screaming towards launch of CanadaSoccer.com. More on that in the coming days. You'll see via our social channels, but we're almost there. It's very exciting for me. As someone who's
it's exciting for everyone. You and I have talked about this project very often, but it's been a long time coming and one that's long overdue, and we're certainly looking forward to it. So that's going to be exciting times for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a website, it's a website. Trying to minimize it in my head, given what's remaining between now and launch. But no, I think fans, listeners, whoever hears this, will be pleased. I think, we've sort of rebuilt it around some of the key areas that may have flown under the radar under our sort of old content management style. And we've really tried to build the site around the people and the competitions and the teams that we run and administer, and try to provide, a fan first look at folks like Christine and gentlemen like Alfonso, and, matches around Canadian championships and the Futsal Canadian Championship, and specifically our national teams programs and matches and the competitions that they play in. So, I have a lot on the line. I'm pretty excited about it, though. I'm building a feedback form for folks out there in the public sphere to submit, and I'm sure that I'm going to maybe regret putting that link live when we go live, because obviously you do everything you can to get 100%, but it's just not possible at a certain point. You have to go live and let the thing live and breathe. So it's coming.
What we say in coach education is it's impossible to steer a parked car. You actually have to get it out on the road and start driving. Yes, there are going to be potholes along the way. We don't know where they are, and when they come up, we'll deal with them. But the reality is we live in a digital world now, and we're going to make mistakes. Nothing's going to be done perfectly on the first draft, and it just takes time. But I think the one thing that we've said over and over again in the last couple of weeks, certainly last couple of months, as we've been dealing with this global pandemic, is we just have to be fluid. And I know that everyone's excited about this. We live in this digital world now, and information and the wealth of information that we have at our fingertips now is powerful. So I know many people won't understand how much work goes into bringing that to life, but from our conversations, I certainly know it's a big portfolio, and has taken the great work of many people, yourself included, spearheading that. So kudos to you, and I will be looking forward to celebrating its launch when the day comes. So on the coach education front, busy times right now. This week's been a very busy one, just operationally in terms of content development, putting our coaching education content online, recording modules, putting them together with new PowerPoint templates and what have you. So just building content and getting it out there. We've expanded the youth license offering to include an online only course that's going to be delivered across the country. So bringing that accessibility to people and bringing the coach education to them rather than the other way around. I mean, the traditional model of coach education was always to bring people to a central venue where they would spend 5 days, 7 days, 10 days, whatever the period of time was. And it would be a tsunami of information delivered in a very short period of time. And we know from all of the research into how people learn that that's not the optimal environment. It's not the optimal learning environment. So we're taking steps to change all of that and to do it in a different way, and to bring the education and bring the learning opportunity to the coaches in a format that works for them. I think that overwhelmingly has been the feedback we've received from coaches across the country, is that it's very difficult to take a week off of work for those who don't work full time in the game, or even for those who do work full time in the game, to be away from your club or your academy for that period of time. So we're now giving people the opportunity to be able to do that in the comfort of their own home, on their own schedule, in their own time, and then interact with the learning facilitators through Google Classroom and the platform that we use to deliver the coach education experience. So it's exciting. And you and I have talked about this offline. The expedition of all things digital really hit home back in March when all of this started, and we shut everything down, and we started living and working in our home offices and on our laptops, and it's just a little bit fast forward than what we had maybe originally intended, but here we are, and I think we've learned a lot along the way, haven't we?
For sure. I think our listeners may remember, and if they don't remember, I encourage you to go back and listen to some of those early episodes, the glee with which we talked about the pace of change and digital transformation as COVID was demanding it to be. And I think now we're sort of beached by that tsunami, just sort of laying there wondering what we'd wished for. And it's a mountain of work. It's exciting, in preparing the website for launch, and in sort of seeing what you guys are doing in the learning management solution space. I've been, sort of trying to look future tense at what all of this is going to mean for the organization on the pathway to 2026, and trying to sort of reconcile what's next and what this sort of really, really solid base that we're putting in place is going to mean for the game long term. And it's in those thought patterns that you sort of take a breath and recognize, okay, wait, there's going to be an element, to steal John Herdman's phrase, of putting this down better than we picked it up. But yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, some days are diamonds and some days are coal. It's you just kind of have to take it as it comes. And again, I think the word of the COVID-19 situation is fluidity, and just being able to roll with it. And I'm excited to bring our first guest on. We'll get to this after the break, but we're going to be joined by the Executive Director of Northwest Territories Soccer Association, Miss Lyric Sandhals, who is going to talk to us all about her experience of taking on that role on a full-time basis, and what the changes have meant over the last couple of years up north, and how they've dealt with COVID-19 up in the territories. So stay tuned. After the break, we'll be joined by Lyric Sandhals. Talk to you then. Very pleased to welcome to the Canada Soccer Nation podcast, Lyric Sandhals, the Executive Director of Northwest Territories Soccer Association. Lyric, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you on. You've been on our list of guests from the inception, the very first episode, and Brad and I often talk about this. We've got to get Lyric on to talk about life in the North and Northwest Territories Soccer and all the great work that's going on up there. So you've been in this job now full-time for a little over 3 years. And I think I've read somewhere that when you signed the agreement to be full-time, that it was your dream job. Has it lived up to your expectations over the last 3 years plus years, or has it been a surprise for you? How has the last 3+ years been for you?
I think it's a bit of both. It's definitely a job that I've always wanted and was working towards. I think there's always surprises along the way and lessons to be learned. I started in the position in 2011, actually with 3 sports. So I was working for NWT soccer, volleyball, and snowboarding, and then transitioned full-time in 2017 to soccer.
Yeah. How did you manage that? Because that workload must have been incredible. I mean, one job is enough as it is, and you're managing the administrative responsibilities for 3 sports. How was that to balance?
Yeah, looking back at it now, I honestly don't know how I did it. It was really busy. But yeah, looking back, it was definitely a great experience. I learned a lot about the sports sector, how it operated in the North and even across the country, how different organizations of different sizes operate and the various governance structures. So I think all in all, it was a really good experience. Heavy workload, but it was worth it.
When I started in this job back in 2016, I kind of went on a tour around the country to try and meet almost everyone in their own location. And I remember when I was discussing with Hugh Morris, the technical director of Northwest Territories Soccer, about coming to visit, and he'd recommend that I come in the summer when the weather was nicer. And I said, no, I want to come in the middle of January when it's really cold. I want to get the real experience. And I was amazed at how resilient people are in Northwest Territories and the vastness of our country. I mean, I don't think you can ever really appreciate it until you go coast to coast, north and south. What are some of the major challenges that you face in the North in implementing soccer, and what role does futsal play in the culture of the game in the North?
Yeah, so I think like our seasons are a lot different than other provinces and even some territories. Our winters are long, so it makes our indoor season very long and our outdoor season short. So we have been transitioning to playing futsal almost 8 months out of the year, and our indoor just a few months in the summer.
I mean, obviously, climate is one of the biggest challenges that you face, and population base is probably another challenge. How do you overcome that? What's that working relationship like when you're working with a much smaller soccer community?
Yeah, so we have a very transient community in the North. People are constantly moving in and out for work and various reasons. So I think we just need to be fluid and adapt to those changes. And, each year may look different. Our clubs, are constantly changing and evolving with people coming in and out. So I think just being willing to adapt and change is really key up here.
Yeah, it's one of the things that Brad and I talk often about over the last 4 or 5 months as we've been dealing with a global pandemic, is that we just have to be fluid and change and evolve and adapt and overcome. And that's kind of a daily occurrence up in the North. So how has this period of time been for you in dealing with COVID-19 and having to work with the governments, the provincial health authorities and territorial health authorities in mapping out a return to play? How has that process been for you?
Well, I went on maternity leave in August of 2019 for 8 months and returned right in the middle of the pandemic in April.
Great time.
So there was a lot of transition there for me, but soccer was totally shut down across the country for almost a month when I returned. So I was playing a bit of catch up, and oddly enough, it did feel busier than when soccer operations were at normal. Looking back, I think it was a really nice reset for our clubs and our association. I think a lot of times our volunteer coaches and administrators get burned out with year-round soccer. So by not having soccer operating for a couple months, it gave everyone up here a chance to take a break and then come back with some fresh ideas, energy, and enthusiasm. Luckily up here, we've had very few cases. We've gone through several incubation periods without any new cases. So our transition to soccer has been fairly smooth. Our return to play plan was approved in mid-June, and we were able to get back on the fields in most of the communities by the end of June, early July. So now all of our clubs are back and running, and our co-ed adult league is up and running in Yellowknife with a few rule modifications. But we're slowly returning to play, and it's been great.
You mentioned there that you were on maternity leave for a period of time, and you have a beautiful baby girl. Tell us about the balancing act. How are you managing that, and how are you combining motherhood with work, and how do you fit that into a busy schedule?
Yeah, I think the most difficult transition for me was actually stepping away from the job to go on maternity leave. After working as one staff alone for 9 years, I found the handover incredibly difficult. we were fortunate enough to get a good replacement, and he took care of the association and kept things afloat while I was away. Yeah, that part was, I think, the most challenging for me. I really enjoyed my time off. As they get older, they're a little bit more fun, I think. They have more of a personality. You can interact with them. So I'm definitely enjoying, seeing her grow and develop now than maybe more than the start. But it's been good.
And is she going to follow in her mom's footsteps and be a soccer player? Have you got a ball at her feet already?
Well, that's a tough thing in our house. My husband's a basketball coach, so he's on pat leave right now. So there's a basketball floating around our living room. So it's going to be a battle. So
she could, in theory, be a combination of both sports. Goalkeeper, we can talk to Karina LeBlanc, and we can get some good advice and some good tips there, because I think she's guiding her daughter Paris towards that direction as well. So maybe a combination of both sports might be ideal for your daughter.
Yeah, she could be a multi-sport athlete. We would be okay with that.
Absolutely, fantastic, excellent. Well, listen, Lyric, I know you're very busy. We won't keep you too long. Thanks for the great work that you've done. It's great to have you back. We all missed you when you were away on maternity leave, and it's great to have you back in the role with Northwest Territory Soccer. Keep up the great work, and I will look forward to our next visit up north. Hopefully it's going to be in the middle of winter again, because it's something that I think all Canadians should experience, is just how amazing the people are in Yellowknife and the surrounding communities. I remember when we were up there, the long drive out to Betchico, and just the amazing facility that's built out there. And I very much look forward to my next trip north to visit with you and all of the players and coaches up in Northwest Territory. So thanks for joining us, Lyric. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful. After the break, we will have two members of Calgary Foothills joining us from their technical staff to talk about the work they're doing at the club in grassroots development, but also a really cool initiative around female development that they're working on at the club. So stay tuned for that after the break. Pleased to be joined now by two members of the technical team at Calgary Foothills Soccer Club in Calgary, Alberta, Wayne Cleverley and Katie Collar. Welcome to the Canada Soccer Nation podcast. How are you guys today?
Good, thank you. How are you, mate?
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good. Thanks, Clevs. Katie, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Excellent. It's great to have you guys on. I mean, obviously we've had many conversations over the last couple of years about the work that you're doing in your club specifically, but also that other clubs are doing across Alberta. Tell us a little bit though, first about your start in soccer, your relationship with the game. Katie, we'll start with you. When did you first play the game? When did you fall in love with it? And what did soccer mean to you as a kid growing up in Alberta?
Yeah, sure. I was introduced super young. I came from a soccer family, so both my parents played. So right from the time that I could walk, I was playing and watching and going out to the field with my dad and going out with friends. So I think right from an early age, when I first kind of started that relationship with the game, it started through my parents, and then completely fell in love with the ball and the ability to kind of, play and enjoy it. So, that was definitely my start, playing in the park and playing, pick up with the boys, from the neighborhood. I started early on for a long time playing in a boys kind of community league, coached by my parents. And that was really where I fell in love with the game and fell in love with the, ability to compete and enjoy it. So, that was definitely my big start. And then all the way kind of through, with family connections to the game, just continued on.
Mm-hmm. Did you have any brothers and sisters who played the game as well?
I do. I have a younger brother. He's 3 years younger than me. He played the game, from a young age as well. Loved it. Was a bit of a late developer. Was a super technical little player, but similar story where he fell in love early, and we enjoyed playing in the park together as kids as well.
Yeah, and you played for Foothills as a youngster growing up in the game, correct?
I did. Yeah, I started. As I said, I started in the community and kind of the boys' league in the community, and when I moved into kind of U12, U13, that's when I went into the girls' side and went into the clubs. And I joined Foothills at actually U13, I believe, was my first year at Foothills. and then was at Foothills all the way through until I graduated out of the program and left for university. So, Foothills kid and bleed green now, but.
You played at university level and you went south of the border into the NCAA to play at, was it Eastern Kentucky University? Tell us about that experience. How did that come about and what was that like for you?
Yeah, I did in Eastern Kentucky. It was an interesting experience for sure. It was a good experience, for me as a player. It was different. It was very different in the environment and the culture, within teams and the way that, things are run down there. It came about just, through my team that I played with at Foothills. We did a lot of kind of showcase tournaments. We went to a couple national championships. And so that's where, we started to look into universities. At that time, it was kind of the thing for everybody to go to the States, right? So there's a lot of options down there. And so a lot of our team went down there and I had a great experience. I obviously, like most people do in university, had my good years and my bad years, but, I went in as a freshman and enjoyed my experience. And, it definitely, was different though. But I enjoyed it.
I think for a lot of young players who go away to university, it's you're dealing with so much change in your life through that period of time, aren't you? And was that the first time that you had lived away from home on your own and had to then fend for yourself in many respects?
Yeah, absolutely. You spend time away when you go to tournaments and camps. I was a camp kid, so being away from home was for a couple weeks at a time. I was a bit used to that, but moving away for the first time completely across the country to a different country. It's not like I stayed close. So, Kentucky was quite the journey and it was definitely, it was an interesting experience. I think the thing that's a bit of a saving grace when it comes to, leaving home for the first time and going to university, if you're an athlete, is that you immediately have, a group of people around you that are like-minded and are kind of your, initial community that, you don't have to go in and meet a whole bunch of people on your own, right? You go in and you already have a bit of a community. So, I think that's a bit of a saving grace when you go away from home is, you go in and your teammates are your immediate kind of, I don't want to say replacement family, but, stand-in family for the time being and help support you in your growth on your own and away.
It's your support network, isn't it? I mean, when
Absolutely.
You're away from home, obviously, as a youngster growing up, you've got your family, your parents, your siblings, or what have you, your friends that are local to you. But when you go away and you're part of a team, that team becomes your support mechanism. You now have that support mechanism as you've come back home and you're now working at Foothills. We'll talk in a second a little bit about the work that you're doing there, but I wanted to get to Wayne Cleverley, our other guest, and I'm going to struggle to call you Wayne, I think, because I don't know that I've ever called you Wayne.
The only person that calls me Wayne is my mum and my nan, I think. So if you want to join that group, Jace, then
I think we'll go with Clevs because I think everyone calls you Clevs. I was introduced to you as Clevs. So you're not from Canada, Clevs. You came here years ago from another country. But I'll let you tell that side of things. Tell us your background in the game. When did you fall in love with soccer or football, as you call it?
So I grew up in a small town in the southwest of the UK, a place called Swindon. All of my family are still based there. Ever since I was a young child, I was given a soccer ball. One of my earliest memories was having a soccer kit at Christmas, which was a Aston Villa strip, hence why I'm a Villa supporter now. Soccer was always on in my household. My dad and my granddad used to take me all the time to watch Swindon. So ever since I was 4 or 5 years old, I just loved the game, and I played it at grassroots level locally with my dad coaching me along with another guy. And then as I hit 11, 12 years old, I got scouted by Swindon and joined the academy program. So things became fairly serious quite young for me, and played through the stages of, pro academy soccer, as we call it. And then I was fortunate enough when I hit 16 to be offered a place in the academy program, where I guess it really opened my eyes up to the game and what it took. And, how the game was played, how good other players were at my age and stage. And then unfortunately didn't make the grade into the professional game and went semi-professional. And that's when I met Tommy Wilden Jr., playing semi-pro, played with him for a few years. And did that sort of circuit like many people do. Met some great people, had some tough times, and got kicked about a bit, and learned some things from the changing room, the banter and all that comes with it. But it really made me grow up at a youngish age. And then out of the blue, Tommy emailed me and said, "Hey, would you fancy coming over to Calgary, Canada to run some camps?" So I said, yeah, why not? So I took a vacation to come out here and ran some camps. It was great fun, coaching in the sun and playing, having the laugh with the lads. And I came back the following year. And then they said to me, would you move over? So I was at that stage in my life where sort of playing soccer was never going to be a full-time gig for me, I guess. So then I started looking into the coaching aspect of it and doing my coaching badges, and then came out to Canada and not looked back since, and proud to call the place my home and meet the people that I've met that have certainly helped with my coaching journey and personally. And yeah, I love it here now. It's a great place to be.
Yeah. So are you still a Swindon Town fan?
Yeah, I keep my eye on them. They're up and down. I mean, I went through the Wembley years and the playoff finals, and they were great times. And then the relegation and all that. So yeah, but I was lucky to watch some fabulous football players: the Glenn Hoddles, Mark Walters, Michael Carricks, James Milners. So watching them locally, when they were young players coming up, it was great. It was awesome.
So if I said the name Kevin Horlock to you, what would that mean?
A brilliant left-footed midfield player. Yeah, he was a very talented player.
I'm gonna send him that. So Kevin was my roommate at Ipswich, and one of the funniest guys on the planet. It's just hilarious, but he was a very good player. One of the only players that I could beat in a foot race, I think, though. But, a really good guy. I know he had some very good years at Swindon Town for sure. I'm absolutely going to send him this and tell him to listen to it. You mentioned there that you had the realization at a young age that you weren't going to make it as a professional footballer, and I've been fortunate / unfortunate to see that in play out in real life with the academy players that were at the clubs that I was at, and just how devastating it was to them at that time. And I remember at Ipswich Town, I used to play squash on a Tuesday afternoon after training with our academy director, Brian Clue. And I asked him once, what's the toughest part of your job? And without hesitating, he said, telling a player that we've had in our academy for years that he isn't going to make the grade. And it's just devastating, because you can see how hard that is for them to deal with at such a young age. They don't necessarily have the coping mechanisms to deal with that. What was that experience like for you? And how did you manage your way through that?
It was tough. It was very tough going into training one day, and we weren't given a heads up, really, and sitting in the office and say, look, you're going to be released. You haven't quite made the grade. And it took me time. It took me quite a while. I remember leaving the county ground, which was the stadium Swindon playing, and I'm thinking, like, what do I do now? I was devastated. I wasn't going to see the lads anymore. I wasn't going to be in the changing room every day and playing football every day, something that all I'd ever known, from a young age. And I didn't know what to do, where to turn, who to ask. Guidance was few and far between, when I got released. So I had to go and get a job. So I got a job, and then a colleague of my mum's, who was actually a scout at the time, a guy called Gary Goodwin, just said, hey, just come and play locally, semi-professional, get your love back for the game. So I then joined my local semi-pro team, and Tommy was there, and the camaraderie, it was sort of the same as what I'd experienced in the academy program, but now it was, you were playing with men each week and training, and the culture and camaraderie was there, and it was great, and it grew my love back for the game. But it was a struggle. It really, really was. And trying to find those people that can support you, and your parents, and you see it now, they say, oh, don't worry, you'll come back. You're still good enough. And you sometimes think, well, are you lying? Because I've just been told that I'm not good enough. So you question yourself and your ability. But yeah, I bounced back. And like I said, I met some great people who helped me along the way. And grew my love back for the game.
Has that experience shaped your approach to coaching young players? Yeah,
absolutely. I used to think of myself as a soccer player. I wasn't, Wayne Cleverley. I was a soccer player. And now with kids who might not make a team or might not make the university they want to go to. And you got to think that these are people now and their children that we coach, especially with the age and stage that I work with. A lot of parents have high expectations for their child, and rightly so. But, we also have to be honest with people. But how we manage them as people is vital. It really, really is, because having been in that world and being told, you're not good enough for a certain team or level, it's devastating. So again, the support network that you have and you get within, your club, your environment is so massive, whether you're 8 years old or 16 years old and just leaving and thinking about the university stream. The culture and environment is so important.
Talk a little bit about the work that you do at Calgary Foothills now as the grassroots lead. What does a day-to-day work week look like for you?
I'll have to be careful what I say now, because Leon's going to be listening. So basically, I head up the U9s to U12s at the club, so all ages and stages within that. And then I also oversee the grassroots programming, so building relationships in the communities, coach education, player development, some external programs that we run for the kids. So yeah, I basically monitor and oversee our development from U4s up to U12 within the club. Highly important role, I guess, because if you get the
you had to say that because Leon might be listening.
Yeah, if you get the foundation wrong, then the building crumbles. So yeah, it's but it's a job I love, working with kids this age.
Yeah. I've seen you work on the field with young players, and you have a great rapport with them. Katie, I want to go over to you now and give you the opportunity to talk about your role at the club, because it's a slightly different one than what Wayne's doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually work in a bit of an older group. So I work with the 13s to 15s primarily with Lee Tucker, so what we would call the development phase. And then in addition, I do some work in women in sport with the club and kind of an initiative that we've been working towards. So those are kind of, two main roles for me in the retention and growth of that program. And then, giving them then into the next program to then graduate out of the club and into university and pro environments.
That age bracket, 13 to 15, is where we traditionally see a significant drop off in participation rates, specifically amongst female participants. What has your work in that space brought to your awareness? What have you realized? What are some of the potential pitfalls that we're seeing or not seeing that are maybe contributing to that drop off?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the kids in this age group, there's so much growth going on and so much, development and hormones and different things that are coming into play, getting into high school, changing friend groups. And I think, with girls, but, with kids in general, that constant and that, that kind of comfort zone in their life, is usually their sport or their thing that they're good at. And what I found, especially working in this age band, the 13s to 15s, is really developing that rapport and kind of, authentic relationships as we would say at the club with the kids is super important. Because if they don't feel supported through their journey, and they don't feel, as Clev's kind of mentioned, they don't feel like there's somewhere for them to go. Even if it's not the professional level, it could just be, playing soccer for fun in your adulthood with your friends. And that's sport for life. But if they don't feel like they have somewhere to go, and people that support them through that journey, I think, that's where we find, kids start to drop out and start to lose their interest for sport. So a lot of the stuff that we're trying to do is find what kids want and what they need and balance that, right? So, do they want to be on the national team, or do they just want to have fun and play with their friends? And how do we provide that environment for them to get to those places where they want to go and enjoy their experience?
Mm-hmm. So you started a program at the club called Grow Our Girls. Tell us a little bit about that. What does that entail?
Yeah, so we built that program off of three main pillars. So the first one is just what we're talking about now, that retention and building capacity of girls in sport. So how do we entice girls to continue to play and start playing and then, grow through the game, and how do we keep them? The next one is our leadership development. So that's a big one that we've built off of, to develop connections both within the club and then beyond the club. So providing kids with role models and the ability to see girls doing things that they could be doing. And then the last ones are our pathway. So as I said, providing the kids the right place to play and to continue to play at whichever level that they desire to play at. So if they are reaching for a professional level, does our pathway complete that to get them there? If they are looking to just, play for fun and enjoy that, do we have something for them to continue to do into, out of their youth careers and into their next step? So we built our women's program around kind of those three pillars. And I think, the main objective is to really connect the community, get the buzz going and show the kids that, it's not just your inner circle that is necessarily, the kind of your bubble, but we're all here and fighting the same fight and going through the same journey. And, we may be at different points of that journey, but how do we connect those people so that they can see, I could be that someday, or I could be her someday, is really kind of what we built it off of.
How important is it for girls that age, you think, in your experience, to have female coaches, female role models, people that they can look up to emulate and to aspire to be like? Is that an important component of this program?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's kind of two sides to that, because I think there's something to be said and a massive point to be said about the influence that male coaches have in the lives of female players as well. We didn't build this program off of saying, females should be the only ones doing this. The program is about developing females so that they can do it and they can succeed doing it. So when we look at, providing role models for our players, I think we have a lot of really great female coaches at the club, a lot of great junior female coaches coming through, who can then model the way for the kids that are coming after that. And, I think from my personal experience, I had a great journey through the sport. I had male coaches all the way along until I got into university, and they kind of, shaped my journey from a young age and helped me along and supported me. But I would say it wasn't until that I actually had and worked with female coaches that I had the realization that I wanted to be a coach, or I wanted to work in sport. And I think there's something to be said there about, if you can see it, you can be it. It's something that's thrown around quite a bit when we talk about, raising young kids. But, there's something to be said there about the ability to see somebody in a position and relate to them. Right. I didn't necessarily, I respected and learned from my male coaches all the way through. And, again, like I said, they've shaped the person and the coach and the player that I am today. But it wasn't until I worked with female coaches that I was like, hey, I could actually do that, and I could have a family and have a life and have kids and, do the things that I want to do and still, be in the sport world and be a female in it. So, that's really where the kind of the base of the program comes from is can we provide these kids with people in positions that they can see that are succeeding, and not just in sport necessarily, but also in life, in the workforce, and what, how they give back to the kids and how they can relate to the kids as well.
That's an important piece, that notion that a child needs to see something as being a possibility. It's very difficult for them to dream of being something that doesn't exist or that they don't see as being a possibility. So I think that's a really powerful piece of this. Last week we had Chelsea Hannison on talking about the work that she's doing with Mark Parker at Langley United out in British Columbia. And they have a program, Kids Connect, that they start teaching leadership skills to young players, boys and girls, from as young as 10 years old. Clevs, that's in your wheelhouse. What's your experience been working with kids in that age group, that age range? How responsive are they to taking on responsibility and taking on ownership of a training session, for example? How empowered do you feel that the kids you work with are capable of being?
Yeah, I think it's huge. And, you know, some of the work I've seen Katie do with some of the young girls and how the older ones speak to them, that they do believe they can do it now and the possibilities are endless. I think a lot of it comes down to, Jace, how brave are you as a coach? Is it everyone looking at you when you're working with the kids, or are you going to allow your kids to do the pre-game talk or halftime talk, set up their own tactics or warm-ups? How much ownership do you give kids? You know, is it too much? Is it not enough? What's the benefit of doing that? So I've seen you do this in a training session before with young kids. What's the benefit of giving them the ownership? I think as a coach and as adults, when we look at the young kids, we don't know what they think. It's almost like they live in a different world to us. You know, their imagination is off the charts. And as the saying goes, imagination can be more important than knowledge. So we're the knowledgeable ones, and, you know, we think we know everything. But again, if we give them that little bit of slack to say, hey, what do you think about this? Would you like to do that? The things kids can come up with, the surprises and creativity, the exploration is mind-blowing at times. But again, it comes down to what environment you have, and do you allow them to do that? Yes, there's places for structure and boundaries, absolutely. You know, children need that in their life, but they also need to say, hey, go and have a go at this. A little bit like, you know, when kids cheat in a game, you know, some kids always cheat, but sometimes you got to go with that. And there's a reason that they might be trying to cheat. You know, they're trying to bend the rules a little bit, but actually we as coaches need to go with that because they're trying to take the game or session in a certain way. And where that ends up, who knows? But again, it's that freedom for the kids to do that and to run certain aspects of a session a game, I feel from experiences is vital. And again, it comes down to that leadership, ownership piece for development.
How do you get the parents on board with that kind of an approach? I can imagine that some coaches might feel that there's a pressure from the parents of the children that they're coaching for them to quote unquote coach and to be the leader, and the traditional model of the coach has all the answers and the players are going to do what the coach tells them to do. How do you have that conversation? How do you start that conversation with a parent group?
I think the first thing, Jace, is when you run a session or a game, you need to leave the players in a place of inquire. Like, they want more of it. Like, what happened there? I want to know more. I want to find out more. Some of the things I've done on the training ground is like mad and bonkers, and people think, what the hell is Clevs doing? But again, it's those little.
I often think that.
It's those little conversations with, you know, the coaches, the players, the parents. A lot of the times the kids will get in the car and say, oh, my coach has done this. It was excellent. And some of the parents think, why the hell were you doing that? But others will just see the enjoyment factor of the kids. You know, a lot of parents will sit there, and if the kids are having fun, they're smiling, they're getting lots of touches on the ball, then that's a massive tick in the box. Some parents will try to peel back the onion a little bit more and find out what's going on. But as coaches, you've got to be open to giving parents feedback. And as we say at the club, parents only know what they know, and if they don't, they just fill in the blanks themselves. So as a club and as a coach, as a leader, it's our job to fill in the blanks at times for parents. So parent meetings, we have, you know, phases. So I will have meetings with the U9 to U12 phase at the club, and I'll explain kids play multiple positions. This is what sessions are going to look like. It's going to be messy, lots of question and answer, guided discovery, and so on. So I know those little things like doing the team talks in front of parents, or letting parents know what the session's about ahead of time, getting the kids in and the parents stand behind them and draw it, or let the parents have the pen, the players have the pen and say, hey, what would you like to do? So you're coaching a group. I look at it, Jace, it's not just you're coaching a team and the team have parents, it's you're coaching a group. And it's very important that within that group, the parents, players and coaches get the same information.
Katie, does that change as the kids get older and they get into that 13 to 15 age category? Or is that relationship building process with the parents the same? Is it more important through those ages to keep the kids engaged?
Yeah, I think it is and it isn't. So, I mean, I think it changes in the sense that the kids become a little bit more independent. They start to think a little bit more for themselves and form their own opinions about, what's going on and what they think and what they like. There is definitely still massive influence, from parents and how, their opinions look and that kind of thing. But I think, the relationship with parents is incredibly important when you're delivering what the goal of what we're doing is. And as Clev said, I think, filling in the blanks for them and helping them understand, why we're doing what we're doing so that, they can, one, buy into it, but two, help guide the kids in the direction that, will be beneficial for them and will help them continue to go down the path that they want to go while, if they start to fall off or start to not enjoy it, why are we doing this? I don't understand. I think it's, incredibly important to continue those relationships, continue to educate and, educate on the new phase that they're going into, educate on, the new, physical development, mental development that they're going through sport and then also support that, on the flip side and support kind of, their feedback on what their kids are doing and feeling from that perspective. But I also think that, it is super important in the age band that I work with, that they start to take more ownership as well, the kids, right? So I think it's a fine balance between, giving the information and educating the parents and then, speaking to the kids and hearing what, they have to say and what their opinion is and where they want to go. So I think it's a fine balance.
Yeah, that ownership piece is huge, isn't it? Chelsea talked last week about the concept of self-leadership, which I think aligns to ownership. And, as the kids get to that age range, sort of 13 to 15, both boys and girls, it is a time of huge change in their life. And having a safe, supportive network of people, like-minded people around them has to help in their development. What's next for the club? We haven't talked about the pandemic yet, but we'll get to that in a second. But where do you go from here? How do you build this program, Katie, and how do you get more girls involved?
Yeah, I think that's the $1 million question, Jason. I think, for us,
that's why I asked you. I want the answer.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think our vision and our vision of where to go with, our women in sport and leadership and is to grow the buzz around it and to grow, the conversation and to get kind of, a bigger reach. So, we started kind of our more public campaign when it comes to the women in sport initiative yesterday on social media. I'm not sure if you saw our video that we put together and speaking to some of the kids at the club all the way through, from the young age group all the way through to some of the girls that are actually in our leadership development program. So, seeing kind of the different stages. But the interesting thing is that I found with, that kind of thing in those conversations is, we didn't prompt them with the questions beforehand. We kind of, asked them on the spot and said, hey, give us your best answer. And if you have to restart, no problem. And they all gave different answers, unique answers, but similar content. So similar, what they're looking for and what they like and what they enjoy. So that's kind of, for us, I think, we have kind of an 8-week plan over the next, little bit to start to roll out from a little bit more public perspective on, what we're looking to do, what our initiatives are, but also getting the buzz going around, what the conversation should be and what the conversation is and how we get, that going. So I think, right now on a, citywide scale, on a provincial scale, on a national scale, there's a lot of people singing some really great songs. There's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of great initiatives when it comes to girls in sport and women in sport and the grassroots level and the development. And I think as we kind of move forward with this, I think getting everybody singing in the same direction, not necessarily the same tune, their own voice, what that looks like, but can we get everybody singing the same song and getting that buzz going and moving kind of in a direction where, as a country and as a, provincial organization that we're on the same page on how we get girls in sport, how we keep them in sport, and how we get them, into roles of leadership and influence and help them succeed when they get there. And I think that's the most important part, is the ability to prepare them for what's next. I think, there's a lot of great stuff going on in getting people into positions, but we're not doing the work in the background to prepare them for those positions. So I think that's really where, we're going is how do we now give those players or those people that are in our leadership group their next step when it comes to professionalism, when it comes to, their job, their university career, whatever stage they're in. And then how do we help them give back to the bigger community? And I think that's really where we can go, as a club. I think that's where we could go as a city. If we get connected on this and start to move forward with the right words and the right messaging. And then even as a country, how do we connect that pathway? How do we keep kids in sport and girls in sport? And how do we promote women who are prepared and ready to succeed into positions where they will? I think that's kind of the next step when it comes to a nationwide look.
Yeah, you said some fantastic things there. I want to pick up on that piece of preparing the child for the path rather than the path for the child. When we snowplow all of the challenges and obstacles out of their way because we think that's helping them, we're actually probably doing more damage to them in the long run than we would be if we said, okay, we're going to help you overcome these obstacles and deal with it. One of the things that all kids, boys and girls, have been dealing with right now is a global pandemic. It's been hard. It's been difficult. I've got 2 teenagers myself, and what they miss most is the social aspect of being with their friends, around their friends, and having that support network. My son gets a little bit more because he's online playing some video games with his buddies, but it's tough for my daughter who's graduated high school this year. How have you managed this process, Clevs, at the club? Obviously, the forced suspension of soccer in March was required so that we could assess where we are, and then each province is now returning to play in a gradual way, in a safe way. How have you managed through that process with the club, and what has changed about the delivery of your programs now that you're back on the field?
So for Foothills and the staff here, I think it's given us time just to reflect on many things we do, from a soccer model, from a club model, what we do. Sometimes we will never have a break like this ever again, because you go in, you do your admin office stuff, and you're straight on the field. So we've really spent a lot of time as staff and as phases thinking about the future, what it will look like, what could we change, and where we go from here. In terms of the program, it was a challenge, like everybody. Had a few Zoom calls with people from all over the country, people out in Oakville soccer and Coastal, and coaches here in Alberta, and just, hey, what's going on? What are you going to do? Picking each other's brains. But we did the online stuff with the kids, but doing ball mastery in front of a screen gets quite tiring at times. So we tried to be creative with what we can do. A bit like Katie said, the social engagement part and psychological was a huge thing for us. Making sure the kids were okay. Personally, forget about the soccer, but they were coping with it. We spoke to parents. We invited the parents on the Zooms when we were doing the technical sessions. And then obviously just waiting to see when we could go outside and what we could do. We planned for scenario A, B, and C. and planned ahead, and obviously under the guidelines developed a curriculum that we could run with, and went from there. We're lucky in Alberta now where we are in phase 2, and to see the kids just back together with their friends is so rewarding. It's been such a tough time and challenging time where coaches and players and clubs have had to adapt and adjust. It's been quite the process. And moving forwards, we've made some slight changes to our program. One being in the younger ages, the amount of time that parents and kids are at the field with us, how many days they're training and playing, and just added a real play factor to our program for the next, foreseeable future. Kids after this don't want to be doing drills and sessions. They want to be playing. They want to be playing games. So our model, especially with the younger kids, has just been play. Lots of fun type activities like that. And it's been a gradual process, but we're certainly seeing some benefits now.
It's been a challenging time for everyone, and I've said this to other people before. I don't necessarily think that it's going to be a bad thing in the long run that we've had a little bit of an enforced break, because it will reinforce our love of the game and what we missed about it. And hopefully it will have everyone come back when they feel it's appropriate to do so, with more energy and more desire to play the game and to put the hard work in to improve at the game. So I know that you're both very busy. I know that you both have to be on the pitch in the not too distant future. So I will let you go. But before I do, I want to say thank you to both of you, Wayne Cleverley and Katie Collar, for joining us on the Canada Soccer Nation podcast, and for the work that you're doing at your club to help kids fall in love with soccer. Keep up the great work, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jace.
Thanks, Jason.
Excellent. Wonderful. Well, I will let you two head off to the pitch to do the fun stuff, which is work with your players and get a ball out and do some training. And when we come back after the break, we'll connect with Brad Fougere, get his key takeaways, and talk about what's coming up next. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Canada Soccer Nation podcast. Brad Fougere joins me now for a debrief. Brad, you got to listen in on that fascinating conversation with Wayne Cleverley and Katie Collar from Calgary Foothills Soccer Club in Calgary, Alberta. What was the thing that stood out for you in that discussion?
Yeah, there was lots there. First and foremost, let's thank friend of the show, Wayne Cleverley. Clevs is great. He is a great supporter of the show.
We didn't even touch on the fact that Clevs also works as a coach developer for Canada Soccer. He co-delivers the children's license and the youth license with Jim Laughlin out in Alberta, and has done some great work in that space. We just ran out of time. Didn't even have time to touch on that. But
he's not someone I knew. He's not someone I knew coming into this, but he's a name that's been out there over the 4 years that I've been at Canada Soccer that is just always out there. And obviously the work that Foothills are putting in as a club and the work that's been done over the years there. I think back to my first national championships. I don't know the exact number. I think there were 5 Foothills teams in that national championships. And then subsequent years, it was just a name that kept coming up. When we started talking about CPL, Foothills was a name that was important in the Calgary sphere around a team that was forming there. So it's a club with buzz for sure. And it's clear why when we speak with people like Wayne and Clevs and Katie.
There's some, when people say Wayne, I always kind of look at them a little bit funny and go, who? I don't even know who you're talking about. Clevs. I met Clevs probably about 4 years ago when I first started in this job. And at the time, Tommy Wheeldon was the technical director of Foothills, who obviously now is the head coach of Cavalry FC and the best dressed man in the CPL. Little shout out to Tommy. But, he introduced me to Clevs, and I got to know him and got to work with him, got to see him work. And one of the best grassroots coaches that I've ever seen. Phenomenal. I put him right up there with some of the staff that I inherited at Oakville Soccer Club. People like Stephen Colleen, Igor Prostrand, Eddie Berdusco. Phenomenal grassroots coaches working in that 8 to 12 age bracket and just connecting with the kids. The kids look up to them. They love working with them. They love being at their sessions. You have to drag them off the pitch, and Clevs has a really, really unique way of challenging them and questioning them and making whatever activity they're doing exciting for them. I was also very impressed with the work that Katie is doing in that 13 to 15 age bracket, and this Grow Our Girls program that she's started out there has so much potential. It's amazing. You know, we talk about every week, Brad, you and I offline talk about guests and who are we going to have on next. And there's so many good people in our country, both male and female, doing great work at the grassroots level. It's hard to draw a line under it. There's so many of them out there, and I can add Clevs and Katie to that long list of people.
Yeah, for sure. And those are two of the more challenging age groups, in my experience anyway.
You think?
That right? I mean, they're both challenging ages. Those were the two areas where I struggled the most in running sessions and just knowing how to keep engagement up. And you know, I mean, anyone can don a goofy wig or a clown outfit or something for a single session to sort of align kids to understand that you're there to have fun, but being able to do it on the regular and really understand that, I mean, you know, Clev's talked about it, that just how imaginative and creative kids are, and to not discourage that, it's a challenge. And he spoke about it. The challenge is the parents are standing there watching, and if you want to do something off the wall,
it's hard.
You got to be confident enough to do something off the wall, and then be prepared to explain it, and explain that it might be counter to what they think. But at the end of the day, if it keeps the kids engaged and it helps, you know, the rest of the group learn by following one kid's lead, it absolutely is the right thing to do. But man, it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah. Well, I think both of those periods, that 8 to 12 range and then the 13 to 15 range, they're periods of such significant social emotional change, physical change in their lives, both for boys and girls for different reasons. But dealing with that alone can be a significant challenge. They start to develop a real sense of ownership, personality. They start to emulate the players they watch on television. They start to wear the jersey of the team they support through those ages. And it, you know, keeping them engaged can be difficult. I think one of the other things that both Clevs and Katie talked about that really stuck with me was this concept of parents as allies, not as the enemy. And I believe that firmly. It's been my experience of working at the club level myself that you have to build relationships with parents, and you have to show the parents that you care about their kids as much as they do. And once the parents understand that you genuinely care about their child, they will give you leeway. They will work with you. They will support you because they know that the work you're doing is coming from a place of care. And I think that's the most important piece. We say this in our coach education program all the time. Parents are actually quite easy to understand because they all want the same thing. They want the best for their child. But unfortunately, most parents, many parents, not all parents, but many parents, they don't really know what that is, or that's never been explained to them. No one's ever sat them down and said, look, this is the experience that we're trying to create for your child because we know that he or she is going to love this, 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 and this. And that's been the feedback. And I think that whole concept of listening to the kids as to what they want is such a big component of that. Because the kids will tell you what they want. They and Clev said it right there. They want more games. They want to play more fun activities, more game-like activities. So can you facilitate that as a grassroots coach? I think that's a really important piece to ponder.
Yeah, for sure. And the piece around, I mean, I think of some sort of future-looking work, which we won't get in too much here, but that whole idea of helping parents understand what it is that you're up to.
Yeah.
You know, we say it's important to do. It's not always the easiest, and it's not always the easiest when you're not dedicated to one team, right? I mean, and I'm sure that's the case with Clevs. It's not just one group that he has to explain to parents why he's willing to be a little bit. Why he's willing to bend a little bit to the will of a kid, even if they're sort of cheating in a race, as he explained there. But it's really a holistic thing that we need to look at. And I know you and your staff are putting together a group of club resources around that exact thing. But let's not gloss over the fact that if you're a coach and you're out there and you're doing a really good job at connecting with parents, it's laudable, and it's something that we need to appreciate. Is not the easiest thing.
100%. Real quickly on the professional soccer front, what's been catching your eye of late, and what's coming up, do you think?
Yeah, we didn't get it there off the top, so thank you for letting us get there on the outro. But MLS is back. Tournament is going to see 3 Canadian teams in the round of 16, which is fairly exciting. Yeah. Maybe somewhat surprising if we're completely transparent with each other. But definitely exciting that all 3 Canadian teams will move forward into that round of 16. Yeah. And then what a NWSL tournament that we've been seeing. This new head coach, when they come into this women's national team program, is going to have a new crop of players to look at. It seems like we've had some exciting performances from some youth national team standouts from previous U20 World Cups. And then we've got a stacked group of women's national team players on that Houston team that are going to make it to have now made it to the final. So that'll be an exciting NWSL final as well. Important to talk about that, I thought. Yeah, for sure. And some goal scorers as well, scoring their first professional goals, which was exciting to see. And we'd be remiss if we didn't mention Jessie Fleming signing for Chelsea, one of the most storied names in world football. Obviously not as long of a history on the women's side of the game, but some top players in arguably the top women's league in the world. And that's where Jessie's going to be. That's been a topic of debate internally over the last couple of days. It's a fun debate. If you have opinions, send them to podcast@canadasoccer.com. There you go. There you go. We're always looking for controversy. For sure. But some, I won't say all, some believe that it's the top women's league in the world. Certainly one of, for sure. It's one of the top leagues. And I'm going to leave you with a fun fact that I learned from our intrepid researcher. Our unnamed researcher that we're keeping in the dark. His initials, though, are Richard Scott, in case anyone was actually wondering. Those initials, again, are Richard Scott. Tells me that in 2006, there was a very strong rumor and published report that one Christine Sinclair had signed with Chelsea FC. Interesting. Yeah, we're still trying to figure out exactly what the details of that were. Again, if anyone knows, podcast@canadasoccer.com. But yeah, a published report saying that Christine Sinclair, a young Christine Sinclair at the time, 2006, would be joining Chelsea FC. As we well know, the NWSL came along not that long later, and but yeah, very interesting report that young Dr. Scott pointed out. 1 week when you and I have maybe 3 to 4 hours of podcast time to spare, we will have Mr. Scott on as a guest, and we will probe the depths of his archives of a mind and pull out as much of the information. For those of you who don't know, Richard Scott is the brains behind much of the history of the game and the cataloging of the history of the game. All of the, 50 to 60,000 photos on Flickr now on the Canada Soccer site that Mr. Scott archives and can probably pull up at a moment's notice. So maybe we'll have to have some kind of a trivia quiz for him lined up that we can go through one day. But that will be a fascinating episode, I'm sure. No denying, a brilliant researcher, a brilliant researcher. Yeah, fantastic. Excellent. We'll leave it there for this week, and we'll see you next week. As always, thanks for being with us. Thank you to Lyric Sandhals, Wayne Cleverley, and Katie Collar for joining us on the podcast today. Stay safe, look after each other, be well. We'll see you next week. Take care.